What is up, everybody? Welcome back to another video. In today's video, we're going to be talking about the Detroit Lions' weapons for this season, specifically the receiver position for the Detroit Lions. We're kind of going off of what we talked about in yesterday's stream, kind of what I brought up, and I kind of wanted to expand upon that in today's video. Look, the receiver position for the Detroit Lions is probably the biggest concern for most fans heading into this season. And it makes sense. The Lions lost some big names this offseason. They didn't go out and spend a ton of money here. They didn't address it in the draft with tons of draft picks. So it makes sense that there's a lot of concerns with what the Lions are doing at the receiver position this season. But yesterday I brought this up on Last Second Dose with me and my man Red, and I kind of wanted to expand upon that in today's video, go into a little more detail, break it down a little bit more. And there is an article that we're going to be reacting to in this video. Not like ranting over this article or anything like that, but I feel like these are concerns of a lot of Lions fans heading into the season. So I think we can address what was stated in this article, and I can respond to it and tell you guys kind of the way I'm viewing it, okay? That way maybe I can take some of that stress out of your life when it comes to the Lions receiver position heading into this year. We're also going to slightly address the tight ends and the running backs as well, so I don't want to say just receivers because it is technically weapons. But anyways, let's just get it started.
Way up, we're going to bite a kneecap off, and we're going to stand up, and then it's going to take 2 more shots to knock us down. And on the way up, we're going to take your other kneecap, and we're going to get up, and then it's going to take 3 shots to get us down. And when we do, we're going to take another hunk out of you. Before long, we're going to be the last one standing.
Welcome everybody to another video. Glad you guys are here. Now I do have a little fan on in the background. It's hot up here, okay? It's like 90 degrees, I feel. It might be. It really might. It's hotter out there. But I have a little fan on because it's hard to record when it's super hot. So it shouldn't be too loud. I moved it far back so I could just feel kind of a little bit of a breeze. But just don't listen for it. I'll put some instrumental in the background and it should be good to go. But I want to talk about this receiver position a little bit. And it's not only just this article. I mean, it's everywhere. This receiver position has been just getting tons of hate this offseason. And it's scaring a lot of people. PFF ranked it at number 31. And that was including TJ Hockenson, which is basically saying, hey, your receiver position is terrible. Hockenson gives you 1 spot. Like that's basically what PFF said. And that's how a lot of people are looking at this. That's why a lot of people are concerned about the Lions this season, because they don't see those big names, right? We just lost those names. Then you're bringing in Jared Goff, who the last couple of seasons hasn't been at his best. And you're like, oh gosh, what are the Lions doing here offensively? So we're just focusing on the weapons, but specifically the receivers in today's video. And I kind of want to respond to this article and break it down. Because like I said, I think a lot of concerns for a lot of fans is exactly what was said in this article. And this is how I used to look at it, but I started to look at it much differently as I continued to dive into it and really learn about each player individually. And we still have videos to do on guys like amon-ra St. Brown. I mean, I know I talked about him a lot before the draft, but now that we got him, I'm super pumped that we have him. Hopefully I could take away some of that stress with the Lions receiver position. And again, this is not for me to come in here and say Lions are going to be a top receiving unit. That's not what I'm trying to argue here at all. But I am trying to maybe make you a little bit less concerned about what the Lions are doing. Now, my biggest concern actually comes with injuries, and we'll get into that because these guys have dealt with some injuries. That's my biggest concern, is staying healthy. But aside from that, I want to dive into the thoughts here. So there was this article put out a couple days ago that said Lions 2021 plan at wide receiver could be their biggest downfall this season. Okay, they also mentioned that safety was another one that people are very concerned with, and that would make sense as well, right? You didn't address that spot. Really, everywhere defensively you struggled last season, but you do have the right minds coming in to help out, specifically with a guy like Aaron Glenn and what he's done with New Orleans, his 3 safety looks, and how he's really just turned the production way up. Going to a split safety set could also be very beneficial for 2 guys that did that back in college. But, you know, we'll focus on that another time. Let's focus on the receiver position in today's video. So we're going to go through this article. I'm going to react to it. Some of the stuff I agree with, some of the stuff I don't completely agree with, okay? So let's get into it. All right. So the first point that's made here is basically stating that the Lions, you know, they don't have top receivers. Basically, the first point is that you're going to be asking guys that were depth receivers, 3rd, 4th, 5th string receivers to basically push up in that 1st, 2nd receiver, you know, that kind of realm. And I can understand why there's a concern there. When you lose Kenny Golladay, who was basically our number 1, even though we didn't really have him much last season, so it's kind of like, okay, I mean, it wasn't. But you lose that guy, signs a gigantic deal with the Giants, you don't get a big name to replace it. Even Tyrell Williams is not that big of a name, okay? I didn't know a ton about him before we signed him, before I started doing research on him. Also, you lost Marvin Jones, you lost Amendola, you lost Agnew. So basically the idea here is that you're going to be forcing guys into these bigger roles that they haven't had to have before. They could just be a depth guy, fit in their role well, but now they're going to be asked to be our top guys. The first guy he mentions is Tyrell Williams, saying that Tyrell Williams was a good number 3 receiver with the Chargers, but now he's our obvious number 1 receiver. I want to respond to that really quickly. I would agree with you. I think he's our number 1 receiver, assuming he's healthy in terms of snaps. I think he can probably get the most snaps of any receiver on the field because of his ability to play inside, outside. However, I could see him not being first in receptions for a receiver. I actually think that's going to go to the rookie St. Brown. We'll see. That's kind of what I'm feeling, but I understand what he's saying here. That's a fair point. You think he's going to be number one. I'm perfectly fine with that, but I do want to address what he said, saying that he was a good number 3 with the Chargers, because while that is true for some of his career, that's not true for the entire career that he was with the Chargers. Okay, this was a UDFA out of Western Oregon. Not a lot of people knew about him. His first year, he only had five targets. So it was like, okay, nothing really there. But it was 2016 where he was forced to step up into a big role. And in 2016, he wasn't the third receiver. He was the number 1 receiver in 2016. Why? Because Keenan Allen went down with an injury. He worked his way up the depth chart on his own as well. But injury struck. Keenan Allen went down, who was the number 1. And Tyrell Williams basically became that guy on that offense. And let's just say he rose to the occasion. We've compared these numbers in the past. But if you put side by side Kenny Golladay, his first year after his rookie season, or his second year, I should say then, and you compare that to Tyrell Williams' second season in the league, where he was forced to be that top guy, numbers are basically identical. And so he does have experience being the top guy in an offense. And when he was asked to do that, he rose to the occasion, putting up 1,060 yards, 7 touchdowns, 60 plus receptions. I mean, his numbers were there. He rose to the occasion, and he was that deep threat on the outside. He was their top outside guy. He's had experience being more than just a number 3 receiver. Actually, the year after that, he was the number 2 receiver when you talk about production, because Keenan Allen returned, and yes, they would go and draft Mike Williams, but Williams wouldn't have that huge role early in his career. So he was still the number 2 receiver in 2017 with the LA Chargers as well. 2018, where he became kind of the third guy, because Mike Williams, who was a first-round draft pick with Keenan Allen healthy, his numbers went down a little bit, but his efficiency actually went up. And you can see year by year, we did this in the past. You guys remember, if you didn't watch my Tyrell Williams breakdown video and you want to know more about Tyrell, check that out, because I don't want to go super into detail here with these guys. We have one on Tyrell. We got one on Perriman. But if you guys want to go check that out, you can. We break it all down, his career. But basically, he became more efficient. He had a little bit less of a role and became the number 3 receiver at that point. He went to the Oakland Raiders in 2019 when he signed that 4-year, $40+ million deal with the Raiders. He came in and he was one of their top targets once again. They were bringing him in to be their top guy. And unfortunately, again, you go check out the Tyrell Williams video, he was very limited due to injuries, but he still ended up being the number 2 receiver in terms of production. But he was basically their number 1 guy. So he's had more experience than simply being just a number 3 receiver. And he's actually been more efficient ever since that 2016 season. He just hasn't had the same targets that he's had back in 2016 because he hasn't been asked to step into that role. So that should give you a little bit confidence that when he was asked to be the top guy, he put up Golladay type of numbers. Then I want to address the next part where they say Quintez Cephus being the number 2 receiver. Now this part I just 100% disagree with. I don't agree that Quintez Cephus is going to be the Lions' number 2 receiver next season. I just don't see that happening. If you're talking about snap counts, maybe you could say that, and maybe that might happen. But in terms of production, I just don't see a way that Quintez Cephus is our number 2 receiver next season. If he is, great, that'd be cool, but I just don't see that happening. As I mentioned, I think St. Brown leads the team in receptions next season for any receiver. So that would mean technically Tyrell would be number 2. So I think those 2 guys will be the top guys in terms of production. Do you think Brashad Perriman will be more of that number 2 type of guy technically when you're talking about outside receivers? Because I see Brashad Perriman playing a lot of the X receiver position next season, which is the X receiver is the guy that's usually staying on the line, is the guy that stays on the line of scrimmage. He gets a lot of man coverage against him. He's going to face a lot of press. He's an outside receiver, and that's kind of how Brashad Perriman's built. He's fast, he's physical, he's tall, so it makes sense that would be his role. So I don't think Cephus will be the number 2 receiver next season. I don't agree with that one. I can understand there's some concerns, and we'll get into it about guys that we brought in, but I don't see Cephus being the number 2 next season. I think he'll be here. I think there'll be some depth, but keep in mind, it's not even like this regime brought in Quintez Cephus. He's just left over from the past regime that they drafted him for. I think he fits. He just left over from the past one. The next part of this article, and we'll probably get back into this near the end of the video, but the next part of this article is kind of what I addressed yesterday when we were streaming, and that was that the Detroit Lions receiver group is very similar to what the LA Rams had in 2017 when Jared Goff had that breakout season, his second year in the league, when he went out and made a Pro Bowl. As it says in this article, the Detroit Lions don't have the receiver group for Jared Goff to get back to the Pro Bowl type of seasons that he had in 2017, 2018. To address the Pro Bowl, I don't care about the Pro Bowl. It's a popularity contest. It is what it is. Usually the good teams get a lot of Pro Bowl players. So I'm not worried about that. But to their point, Goff was good in 2017, and he was really good in 2018 as well. In 2017, he had 28 touchdowns, 7 interceptions, a 100.5 pass rating, and only 15 games played. He was fantastic in 2017. But what the mainstream media, all right, these people that don't dive into it like us Lions fans do, what they try to perceive a guy and make us think a guy like Jared Goff is not what he really is. They make it sound as if, okay, they make the idea of Jared Goff sound, and this is why a lot of people think this way, that Jared Goff is this quarterback that had no success unless he had the top weapons. He needed the best receivers. He wasn't making guys better. He was just there. Any quarterback could have had success, but that's just simply not true. Okay, now we know right now what the Rams have at the receiver position, they got some darn good receivers. We know that now, but heading into that 2017 season, there were a lot of unproven weapons that the Rams had. They had a lot of question marks at that receiver position and with their weapons, just like the Detroit Lions do now. And honestly, you could make an argument, this is before the 2017 season, that the Lions, you kind of knew a little bit more of what you were getting aside from the injuries than the Rams knew what they were getting. Now, like I said, Cooper Kupp now, he's a beast, right? We know that. Robert Woods, he's been really good. We know that. We know what Gurley would be for 2017 and 2018. But heading into the year, we didn't know what we know now, okay? And those guys had their best seasons with Jared Goff. So it wasn't like Jared Goff was just along for the ride. He had great weapons and, they were just average. No, their best seasons came with Jared Goff, all right? And that's the clip that I have from yesterday's stream. I'm going to add a little bit more to that when we get back, but I'll show you guys the original clip from yesterday because I think it was a little bit eye-opening to me personally when I was rolling through the numbers, and it's why I wanted to make this video to add a little bit more context to this, okay? So let's roll the clip.
What I compared here is I looked at the Rams in 2017. That's bad typing. 2017. This was the first year Sean McVay came in. This was when Jared Goff balled out. He went 28 touchdowns, 7 interceptions, plus 100 pass rating. He was really good. They went 11-5 this season. Okay. All right. And I was taking a look at who their weapons were that year, and I compared it to what we have heading into this season. And I thought it was interesting that the weapons that they had coming into the year with, like us, they didn't have a lot of guys that they knew what they were going to get. I think when you spend a lot of money on a free receiver, you spend it because you think you know what you're going to get, right? We don't really have that, but neither did the Rams. Their top weapon in 2017 was Todd Gurley, okay? Now, Todd Gurley before that season was averaging 32 receptions and 250 yards a season. But we have Swift, who last season had 46 receptions for 357 yards. And you scroll down, his number 2 weapon was Cooper Kupp. Cooper Kupp was a 3rd-round pick. That was his rookie season where Cooper Kupp led the team as a receiver. He was his number 1 receiver in 2017. He had 62 receptions for 869, but that was his rookie season. So they didn't know what they were going to get. It was just a 3rd-round pick. Right. I think that's similar to what we have going on with amon-ra. I think they're both going to be slots a lot of the time too. He should have been higher than a 4th-round pick as well. Don't know what we're going to get, but I think they're both going to be, he's going to be a beast.
I think he's going to be good. I got a lot of faith in St. Brown. I really do. I like where you're going with this. Continue.
All right. Woods, who was a 2nd-round pick. Now, his best season that Robert Woods ever posted before that was 65 receptions for 699. This was his 3rd receiver. He averaged 50 receptions and 600 yards a season. Now, Tyrell, who we brought in, like you said, is our top guy, basically at receiver. His best season was over 1,000 yards, 69 receptions. And that's when Tyrell became the number 1, because in that article, he says that he was the number 3 receiver, but Tyrell Williams did get an opportunity to be the number 1 receiver when Keenan Allen was hurt for the year. So he stepped up, became number 1. Mike Williams wasn't there, and he put up almost 1,100 yards. He put up Galladay stats. Robert Woods didn't prove that, and Robert Woods was his 3rd receiver. Now, his 4th receiver, Watkins, was good. But Watkins, that didn't even last because with Watkins, he said he was partying too much. So he said he was partying too much. He said, I would go to practice, and I couldn't practice. But Watkins was his 4th receiver. Our 4th receiver could be a guy like Perriman, right? And then Perriman's best season was 36 for 645. We did the video on that. Last 5 weeks of the season, I think last 4 or 5 weeks season, he went over 100 yards when he was their top guy because Mike Evans and Chris Godwin was out. And then his 5th option to throw to was Tyler Higbee. Now, Tyler Higbee was a 4th-round tight end that the year before had 11 receptions for 85 yards. TJ Hawkinson's a Pro Bowl tight end that last season went for 67 receptions, 723 yards, and most people think he's a top 10, top 5 tight end in the league. And then it was Tavon Austin. Tavon Austin had 58 receptions for 509. That was the best year of his career. The year that they had Tavon Austin, because he was their 6th receiver, only had 13 receptions. I compared that to Cephus, who had 20 and 349 last season as a rookie. So I think the reason I put this together is because I think when you look at it, the Rams didn't really know what they were getting either. But what did the Rams have? They had the 6th-ranked O-line, and they had the 14th-ranked run game with 4.3 yards per carry. And I think you touched on it. that offensive line was borderline top 10 last season. You put Sewell in that mix, that could push up. You're hoping maybe for top 5. And we got the running backs. We have the running game coaches. I think this showed that you didn't have to get proven guys. And Goff went out there and posted over 100 pass rating, led to 11-5 team. All he had to have was a solid running game. If we get that, I actually think our weapons are better when you compare left to right. We got a better tight end. We have a running back that was outstanding last season. We have Tyrell, who had the best season of any of these guys.
You know, when you break it down like that, you got me buying in. I like it.
You know what I'm saying?
That's a good breakdown. That really is. That when you put it to me like that. I mean, yes, I feel like St. Brown could possibly do what Cooper Kupp did.
Yeah.
Tyrell Williams, he's proven that he can put up some numbers. He just needs to stay healthy. Perriman and Sammy Watkins, I don't know.
That one's tough. That one's tough. But my point was that Sammy Watkins didn't even do that much. Yeah,
Hockenson can outball Higbee, like hands down. I do get that. And then we should have a top tier offensive line, so that should elevate the run game and take some pressure off Goff and just let him make good decisions with the football. We could play some good football.
The point was that, hey, you didn't need all these proven weapons. It's not like he had into the year with millions of dollars put as receiver position. They knew what they were going to get. All these guys were top receivers elsewhere. No, you kind of had what the Lions had, maybe even to a lesser degree, but yet with Jared Goff, they took off offensively. They had their best seasons with Jared Goff. They would eventually get paid with Jared Goff. But what did Jared Goff have? Jared Goff had a rushing attack. Jared Goff had that ability to take pressure off of him. And this is something that every quarterback needs. It's not optional. You have to have an effective run game. That's not to say you need to rush for, 2,500 yards. You just have to have an effective run game that takes pressure off of your quarterback. And that's what he had. But that's what he didn't have in 2019 and 2020. But no one seems to understand that for some reason. Everybody just seems to think Goff just got worse. Goff got worse. You think just Goff got worse? I mean, that's really your explanation for this? You can't take a little bit more time to realize that his run game became abysmal on the right side, okay? In 2017, he had the 6th ranked offensive line. Now, I don't know what the Lions will rank, and that was according to PFF. That was their measurables. He had a darn good offensive line. I don't know what the Lions will rank in your eyes or what they will at the end of the season, but I can tell you what. At the end of last year, they were borderline top 10 by the same metric of PFF, and before the season starts, they're ranking them in the top 10 at number 10 before the season, okay? And we don't even know what Penei Sewell's going to turn into. You had a borderline top 10 offensive line before you took the top offensive tackle in this year's draft. All right, so the idea is we should have a pretty good offensive line, and even these people that think we're going to be terrible this season, and I think we have this horrible receiving group, still recognize that, hey, Lions do have some promise in that offensive line. It is a pretty darn good offensive line. That's exactly what Goff had. What else did he have? He had a run game. As you can see on the right, in 2017, that Pro Bowl year, his first Pro Bowl season, great season, the same season with those same receivers, they had the 14th rushing offense in terms of expected points. All right, now this is a weird metric, but I like it a lot because it takes in consideration down and distance. It's play by play. It's not just yards per carry, which can be very, it can be a little bit thrown off. It's not just simply total yards, because we know if you run the ball a ton, yeah, your yards are going to be higher. Doesn't mean you're being effective, but your yards are going to be really high. Expected, it was only in the top at 14th, okay? And it was first in 2018. No surprise, they went to the Super Bowl that season because he had a very good run game. But look what happened in 2019. Look what happened in 2020. The run game fell off. It was 27th in 2019. It was 30th in 2020. Heck, our run game was better than that last season. It was 24th for the Detroit Lions last season. All right, now you add the coaches, you've added running back help, and you've added a top tackle in the draft. Okay, so what does Goff need? Goff doesn't need to have the most money spent at receiver. He's proven that to us. What Goff really needs is he needs an effective run game. And that's what the Lions have focused on this offseason. They didn't go out and spend tons of money at receiver, but why would you go out and spend tons of money at receiver? Why would you go lock up long-term big deals with these big receivers if you don't even know if Goff is your quarterback going forward? Anthony Lynn is not coming in here and saying, hey, this is my offense. This is how we're going to do it. All right, you're going to fit into this. And these are the receivers I want to go get. Because if it was, he could just go sign anybody he wanted to. But the Detroit Lions saying, why would we do that? Let's go get guys on cheaper deals that Jared Goff wants to play with, like your Chad Hansons, who they've already signed. Let's go get guys that fit Jared Goff and see what happens. And if it works, great. We know you're a quarterback going forward. We can get these long-term deals. We can invest. But we want to be sure of that. It makes no sense to go out and spend a ton of money just so PFF can rank you in the middle of the pack and say, hey, they have some solid weapons. Who cares what PFF thinks, right? They're going to change the rankings by the end of the year anyways. However, what the Lions need to have, just like every quarterback needs to have, it's universal. Every quarterback needs this. They need a run game. You have to have an effective run game. So that is one spot the Lions can address, and every quarterback will be grateful. address the run game. And that not only came with Jamal Williams, that not only came with Jermar Jefferson, that also came with Anthony Lynn, that also came with Deuce Staley, and it came with Penei Sewell. But that brings me into my next point and the final point of this article, which again, I'm just completely on the other side of the fence with, and I don't completely agree. But this, right, now let's address each one of these receivers that he brings up in this article individually, because I think these are just the ideas, and it's the media, it's what they tell us these receivers are, but it's wrong, okay? It's simply wrong. So the first receiver they bring up, they say Tyrell Williams is primarily a deep threat. And while yes, he has been a deep threat in the past, and he showed us back, like I said, with the Chargers when he was the number one, that he could be that deep threat, he could take the top off, and guess what? He could find a lot of success doing it. That's why he has the most 75-yard plus touchdowns in the league since that time. So yes, he is a deep threat. But that's not all he is. It's not like he's just one-trick pony that's just simply a deep threat. That's what the national media wants to make us think he is, because he's 6'4", he's 200 pounds, and he's fast. He's a deep threat, okay? That's what he is. But that doesn't fit Jared Goff, because that's not what he had back in the LA Rams. But again, that's because that was Sean McVay's scheme. However, Tyrell Williams is not just simply a deep threat. And how do we know that? We know that because Anthony Lynn didn't simply use him like that. Plus, we know that Tyrell Williams said that he's not simply a deep threat. Why did Tyrell Williams sign a deal with the Detroit Lions? He said this: I love stretching the field, but a big reason I signed here is because they see me as a big guy who can run a whole route tree, okay? We're not just talking deep threat. We're also talking intermediate routes and crossing route. He's not just simply a deep threat on the outside. And also, we know this because Anthony Lynn didn't simply use him as just a primary deep threat that would just run straight all the time. Anthony Lynn changed it up when he brought in these outside weapons, because he put Tyrell Williams in a spot that he felt like Tyrell Williams was going to thrive. And this is why we had the video on Tyrell. You can watch the whole breakdown. But basically what Anthony Lynn did is say, okay, Tyrell, we're going to play you at slot. We're going to use you as a big slot. In 2017, he did it 38% of the time. In 2018, 43% of the time, he had this guy playing that big slot position. So yes, he can play on the outside. Yes, he can find success on the outside, but he's not this one-trick pony that can only do that. And that's why Tyrell Williams signed here, is because most people will look at him as that guy. But Anthony Lynn knows differently, because Anthony Lynn coached him, because he coached him to his strength. He used him differently. He said, this is what we have on the roster. I'm going to use you as a big slot. And when he did that, Tyrell Williams became one of the most efficient slot receivers that football saw. At one point, he was ranked as the second best slot receiver in the league in terms of productivity, behind only Jordy Nelson, okay? A lot of his stats came on drag routes, crossing routes, attacking the middle of the field. Occasionally, he would take the top off, and that's what the Lions need, but there's versatility within his game as that big slot, and I expect the Lions to use him like that this season. He can be a top guy, because the Raiders gave him that 4-year, $40 million deal. The only reason that didn't work out is because of injuries. He got cut. So again, the only concern I have with Tyrell is not how he's going to fit. It's not how effective he's going to be. It's that whether or not he can stay healthy. Next part, they bring up Breshad Perriman, and they say this about Breshad Perriman. Breshad Perriman is primarily a deep threat, just like Tyrell Williams, and that's all he's been, yet he hasn't even been successful like Tyrell Williams. He would agree with this point that Breshad Perriman through this time in his career has been primarily just a deep threat on the outside, and that's why I think he fits well as the Lions' X-receiver this year, just like how Tampa Bay used him. When he was with Antoine Randall L., who is our receiver coach, he was scary when he took over as a top receiver, because for multiple straight games he went for 100+ yards. He was one of the top receivers in the league through that stretch when Mike Evans and Chris Godwin went down. He said, hey, I can be that top guy and find success. But the label that's put on Breshad Perriman, and we have a video saying that Breshad Perriman has the Lions mentality. The label on Breshad Perriman is he's this guy that can't catch a lick, right? He can't catch anything. He dropped all these passes with the Ravens, and you would be correct. He did. He was bad with the Ravens. And we have a whole video breaking down on why that may have happened, injuries, having that confidence, things like that. But since his time with the Ravens, he has been nowhere near that same type of receiver. With Cleveland, he didn't drop a single pass with Cleveland as their outside threat. And guess what? When they threw it his way, he had a 120+ passer rating. So you had a lot of success throwing the ball to Breshad Perriman. Also, you move forward then to 2019 with the Buccaneers, when he got his chance to shine. He was the second best receiver against man coverage, according to Pro Football Focus. Guys could not cover in man coverage. That is a size, he has a speed, and a lot of times those X receivers get a lot of man coverage. They press up against him. You can't do that against Perriman unless you put a safety over top, because good luck against that, because he was the second best receiver in 2019 against man coverage. And guess what? In 2019, he did something special. He had over 65 targets. He became one of only 5 receivers in 2019 with 50+ receptions receptions to only have 1 drop. Only 1 of 5 receivers. That doesn't sound like a guy that drops everything. And then he moved forward to the Jets. All right, now the Jets, it wasn't the best, but he was one of the top guys with the Jets. He was still had some solid production with the Jets, considering he didn't even play in every game with the New York Jets. And his quarterback was Joe Flacco, so now he's playing with the best quarterback that he's ever played with. That was just a bad offense. Okay, I don't know why the Jets thought that, hey, let's pair him up with Joe Flacco again. Like, that didn't work the first time. He had a couple of drops with the Jets, but he was still much better. He has been nowhere near that same receiver. So Brashad Perriman fits perfectly into what the Detroit Lions are adding in their receiver group, because Brashad Perriman has the same versatility that a guy like Tyrell does. Now, he hasn't been utilized as much there, but he's the same player that you could throw inside and you can let him go to work one-on-one. And I think what the Lions are trying to build when you talk about type of receivers, I think they want their bigger outside guys to be able to play inside. And that's why Perriman's been working inside so far this offseason. Tyrell obviously can do that. That's why he came here. Even Allison, if he makes the team, has the background to do that. We think Cephus could as well, because we thought he could be successful doing that coming out of the draft. But I think that's the kind of receivers that the Lions want on the outside. Because if you're going to play a lot of spread, if you're going to have multiple receivers on the field, you need to have guys that can move all around, can play all the different spots on the fields. And then what the Lions say, they're going to be a matchup-based team. Then you can find the best matchups and just go off. If it's Perriman can't be stopped, you feed Perriman until someone slides over and then someone else opens up, right? It's going to be a matchup-based team, and that's what the Lions looking for on the outside guys. And if a guy like amon-ra St. Brown, who they drafted, but he can even play outside as well. And then, like I said, you have your couple speedsters. You know, you have your Khalif Raymonds that's competing with a guy like Victor Bolden. Have a returner / that speedster. You know, that smaller guy that can kind of just make some special plays, whether that's through a handoff, whatever it may be. So I think it's clear the type of receivers that the Lions are going after this offseason. It fits like what the Chargers had when Anthony Lynn was coaching there, the type of receivers with Mike Williams, Tyrell Williams, Keenan Allen, because they had the ability to all play outside, inside, move around, and it fits really well with the spread offense. It's what Jared Goff had back at Cal. Both of this. His top receiver in 2015 was Lawler. All right, he was 6'3". Poe was 6'3". Treggs was 6 foot. His tight end / receiver Anderson was 6'3". Harris was 6'3". Davis 6'2". Hanson 6'2". That's the kind of receivers that he had. So they play outside, inside, because he was playing in a spread offense. Needed multiple receivers that could play different spots, because there's only so many spots. So you got to be able to play different spots based on matchups, and that's what the Lions have been going after this offseason. It may look a little messy because some of the players are left over, and that always happens when you change, staffs. Always happens when you change staff and you turn over. But what the Lions have done is they've given everybody a chance, offensively and defensively. They're not coming in and saying, this is how we're doing it. We're going to give everybody a shot to compete, for roles. And that's what's so awesome about what the Lions have done this offseason. They're going to make yards after the catch, and everybody the Lions have brought in have done that. Perriman, Tyrell, they rack up so much of their numbers. Even Dremel Allison, who was, over from last season, third of his yards came after the catch. So a lot of, these guys that we've brought in make a lot of plays once the ball is in their hands. And that's something that Jared Goff has always utilized wherever he's been, whether it's with quick hitters, screens, or even with the LA Rams, with a lot of underneath options, catch and run after you get the ball in your hands, whether it's to the running backs, and then the receivers have to have size to block. So I can see what the Lions are doing here. It gives a nice little mix between the Chargers and what Jared Goff was comfortable with. Next receiver that they bring up is Khalif Raymond. Now, there's no guarantee that Khalif Raymond even makes the team. Is faster than quick. We don't need Khalif Raymond to play that slot position a ton for the Detroit Lions, because Tyrell's going to do some, Brashad's going to do it a little bit, and also, like they say in this article, amon-ra St. Brown will be your slot next season, just like Cooper Kupp was, and he's going to have a lot of success at doing it. We have enough guys that can play slots. We frame it a little bit of a mix of Marvin Hall and a little bit of a mix of a guy like Travis Benjamin. Okay, I see a mix here. First off, Khalif Raymond is very quick. Okay, his 10-yard split was 1.48 seconds, which is great. He also had a shuttle of 3.96 seconds, which is just outstanding. Plus, he ran that 4.34 40. Yes, he's fast, but he's also quick as well, and you can see it. But they have used Khalif Raymond in the past kind of as an outside Marvin Hall, a guy that doesn't have tons of receptions, but when he does catch it, they're deep passes. So I see him as a Marvin Hall if he makes the team. But I think his role will be a little bit more than that as well, because just like the Chargers used Travis Benjamin when Anthony Lynn was there and gave him 20 carries and he averaged almost 7 yards per carry, is the same way that the Rams would use a guy like Tavon Austin. Tavon Austin, who would not only get involved in the passing game occasionally as a deep threat, but also could be a guy that you could hand it off to, run some trick plays, run some end arounds. A guy that can play outside, can be the deep threat, can be a little bit like a Marvin Hall, but also could be a little bit of a Benjamin. And by the way, Travis Benjamin hasn't had a carry since Anthony Lynn was there working with him with the Chargers. The reason they brought in Khalif Raymond, Victor Bolden's been looking good as well, because I see him getting that similar type of role. But Khalif's not even going to be a top guy for the Lions if he makes the team. He also has that ability to kick return, so So you need to have a guy like that as well. Finally, they bring up Geronimo Allison, who I don't even think is a guarantee to make the roster. I think Khalif can make it, but Geronimo Allison, I even said in my video that I don't think he makes it. I'm leaning towards him not making it because he wasn't brought in by this regime. He doesn't have the fit that the Lions maybe are looking for because this is not someone that they even brought in. However, they've kept him around so far, which is good news. They haven't kept around any of their other opt-outs from last season. But what Allison brings, as they say here, is that he's only an outside receiver. I would agree. Pretty much, he has played big slot. It didn't work. You're right. It did not work with the Packers. We did a video on Geronimo Allison. I don't know if he makes the team, but I'm okay with having a guy that's more of an outside receiver because, again, the Lions would need depth there. That's what Geronimo Allison can bring to the table is an outside receiver that, when he played on the outside, was really good with the Packers. When they try to make a big slot, wasn't that good. All right, you can use him occasionally as a slot, but you can't use him all time as a slot like Matt LaFleur tried to do, and it was unsuccessful. Occasionally, you can put him at slot, let him be a size matchup, but that's how you got to use him. For him, he's an outside threat. I would agree with you there, but that's what the Lions would need because they need depth there anyways. But if they feel like Cephus brings that table, which I think that he can, then I don't even know if Geronimo Allison makes the team. And that's why I said I'm leaning towards him not making the team anyways. They finish it off by saying that amon-ra St. Brown is going to fit well. I agree with that 100%. And they also say that, yes, we have some promising UDFAs. That is true. We have to get away from the fact that these receivers don't need to be just like the LA Rams receivers. That was my first idea too when we first got Goff, is that, oh, we got to go get guys like he had with the LA Rams. Okay, when Jared Goff had a lot of success in college, did he have the same receivers that he had with the Rams? No, actually, Jared Goff back in college had very similar receivers to what we have now. Big receivers like the Lions have now. Everybody they have now is basically over 6 foot aside from Khalif Raymond. The Lions have built now in their receiver group is very similar to what the LA Chargers had with Anthony Lynn. So I can see some of the resemblance there. Goff even gave us the proof that this is the truth, that this is what the Lions are doing now, saying that, hey, look, I'm empowered by the Detroit Lions staff. The opposite of being micromanaged by the LA Rams because he was put into a system not built around what Jared Goff's strengths were. He also said this, because remember, Sean McVay did not draft Jared Goff. Jared Goff was already there. So he just said, okay, here's my offense. This is how we're going to do it. You're going to fit into this. That's why he played completely different to what he did in college. And credit to Goff, he made it work, but no, they didn't fit it to his strengths. He also said this, they do what I like. He says the Detroit Lions right now are building this offense as how do I like to do things. He says they want to hear from me and I want to hear from them. They're working off each other to how they're building the roster, but also how they're going to utilize Jared Goff this season. Jared Goff said, hey, look, it's going to be more spread, which is what I did back with Cal, so that makes sense that they're already doing it to his strengths, and we're going to implement a little bit of what Anthony Lynn did with the Chargers and what he did with the Bills. Probably a little bit of what he did with the Bills in terms of the rushing attack and the Chargers as well, but also what he did with the Chargers and the type of receivers that he's bringing in. So this fits not only how Anthony Lynn envisions this offense, but also to Jared Goff's strength, and that's why they've made moves like signing Chad Hansen, because it is literally a guy that Jared Goff played with back in college. Okay, so it's important to note that they're not building this offense as to where he had success with the Rams. They shouldn't do that because that was just simply McVay's scheme. Same approach to take it to the defense, staying in the 3-4, not to what you had with the Rams, not to this is my scheme, this is what you're going to play in. They are building it as to what do you do well. Those are the type of receivers and weapons that we're going to target. And if it works this season, then going forward, we can get long-term options. But we don't need that now. Why spend a ton of money in the receiver group in a position that we don't even know who our quarterback is going forward? We hope it's Goff, but if it's not, be locked up to a ton of receivers. If we were building this through Anthony Lynn's scheme and not worrying about what Jared Goff wanted, then yeah, you can go sign up a whole bunch of these big name receivers and give him long-term deals. But this is how we know, and it's proof that that's not what the Detroit Lions are doing. Hopefully, this took away a little bit of your concerns with Jared Goff and this receiver group. That's not me coming in here saying that this is a great receiver group, because I don't think it's great either right now. There are a lot of questions. My biggest concern is injuries, but it's not the scheme fit for a guy like Jared Goff. So let me know your thoughts, comments below. Thank you, Pride, for watching, and I'm out.